Dr. Romika Sudan, right. She's Associate Professor of English, Department of Humanities, Government College of Engineering and Technology, Jammu and Kashmir. Her topic of research is disintegrating cultural values of East in R.K. Narayan's The Vendor of Sweets. Not going into much ado, I straight away invite Dr. Romika to come and present her paper.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I am really thankful to the organizers for shortlisting my paper. And I am thankful to you also for giving me a chance to present my paper, ma'am. It's indeed a very warm morning to all of you. And so I come with my topic, Disintegrating the Cultural Value of East in the R.K. Narayan's The Vendor of Sweet. I once again I wish very good morning to all the fellow presenters, students, and research scholars. So here I go, ma'am. I begin with this. What is disintegrating cultural values of East in R.K. Narayan's, R.K. Narayan's the novel Vendor of Sweet? So, ma'am, basically we all know that our culture has been disintegrated over a period of time since colonization has taken place, and aftermath, its effects have been seen in our society. So I begin with it only because culture is something that we transmit from one generation to another, and it's something like our knowledge, experience, beliefs, values, attitudes, and religion by a group of people which generally we follow. Ma'am, I'm sharing the screen. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, yes, it is visible, very much visible. Please come along.
Thank you. So, talking about it, okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. So it has just been passed upon from one generation to another. I was talking about the culture and Vendor of Sweets since I have been teaching the students from the last 2-3 years, and I found it is a very interesting novel because there were so many aspects which has been left uncovered by us, and more and we have not done much research upon it. But since I was working upon it, I find there are so many open-ended interpretations that I found it out and which I would like to present before you. First thing, it depicts the cultural change that has come in close contact with the alien culture. And so whenever a cultural change takes place, that there are two kind of forces that exist. One is encouraging change and another resisting change. People, a young generation always encourage the change that has taken place, and that is taking place with respect to the new culture, and the old people, which is represented by Jagan, he is resisting change. So it represents Indian village and life. Next is when R.K. Narayan has talked about the Malgudi, he has deliberately chosen it as a microcosm of India to highlight the impact of colonization. As we all know that colonization has affected the life of young generation by enculturation and socialization. So it has resulted in the East-West dichotomy, which we have seen because Eastern people, they find that somewhere their culture has been disintegrated. The Western people show the superiority of the culture, and they have developed the craze and propagated the myth that whatever is from the Western world is superior to other, and this inferiorization has really made the Eastern people to feel so much devalued in their culture, and as a result, they become a very easy victim to all these kind of things. So British rule has also made a tremendous influence on the minds of Indian people by establishing schools and colleges on the pattern of inferiorization of native thoughts and philosophy, propagating only Western ideologies and ideas among the natives to make their rules firm. So we call it as post-colonial work of art because after colonialism only we were able to assess what we have lost and what we have gained. So when the term post-colonialism was first coined in 1960 to designate the period of extensive decolonization after Second World War, and it talks about the countries that were colonized mainly by the European nation, and it focuses upon the issues of power, economics, politics, religion, and culture, and how these elements work in relation to colonial hegemony. Despite the progress that has been brought under European colonialism, there was usually a resentment towards the European who have conquered and subjugated the native people, leaving them to feel that they have lost their voices in their own land as a result. So feeling voiceless, they feel they wanted to look for a platform where they could express their ways and views. Okay, and so as a result, we have taken a reference from the Albert Camus story Guest, in which the main characters also shows loyalty between two cultures. One is the native culture and another is the French colonial government. So this is how we want to tell us that in that the Eastern cultures in dilemma which side they have to go. So it's moving like a pendulum to and fro and picking up the qualities of the East and West together. So post-colonial theorists, they have also interested in the intersection of race, gender, and colonialism as process of operations. So Edward said in his book, Orientalism, he has said that he has developed a post-colonial theory. His book depicts the imbalance between the West and the East by showing the superiority of West over the East. So moving on, let's discuss in details that Britain advocated that West and East form a binary opposition in which two poles defines each other. The inferiority that Orientalism attributes to the East simultaneously serves to construct the West superiority. Barry also pointed out post-colonial writers evoke or create pre-colonial version of their own nation, rejecting the modern and the contemporary, which is tainted with the colonial status of their countries. The first characteristic of post-colonial criticism and awareness of representation of the non-European as exotic or immoral other. Homi K. Bhabha is another post-colonial theorist. In his book, The Location of Culture, put major emphasis upon the concept of hybridity, that all cultures are confluenced in each other and it cannot be separated. So hybridity is a solution that Arkin Ryan has provided in his novel, The Vendor of Sweet, when two cultures mingle together and a one culture is formed, and it basically means respecting each other culture and accepting one another. 20 years after independence in 1967, when he thought about writing Winter of Sweet, he was wanted to deal with the issues of colonialism, and he has shown the tensions that had arisen between the two different cultures belonging to different generations. Jagan is the first character, that he's a follower of Gandhi and a veteran of the wars against British imperialism. He's a representative of older generation, and his son Mali stands for the new generation with the materialistic aspirations which the English medium school has produced. Jagan is a man with the duality of self. He now belongs to a space that bears a syncretic concoction of a balance between the claims of tradition on the one hand and the contrary pulls of a rapidly urbanizing and commercializing post-colonial reality in the society of Malgudi on the other. Krishna Sen, one of the critics, finds in this existence of Jagan's Narayan's ironic hint at the presence of a multifarious strata within a single personality. His quest for truth begins with his misadventure with his son Mali, who betrays a propensity for the lures of a wayward Westernism that repudiates the call of one's inherited culture. His way of thinking is completely baffling and unintelligible, and his reaction shows a helplessness and indeterminacy coupled with filial weakness. Mali's outlook was quite different. He does not care for the concern of his father and does not listen to his advice. He has sky-high ambitions and feels fascinated by the showiness and gaudiness of American materialistic culture and does not think of anything else. The Malgudi tone and culture also look abhorrent to him, and he feels obsessed with the idea of going to America. His sojourn in America consolidates his disliking or disenchantment with the traditional life of his country. He suggests his father in letter written to him, quote, "After 3 years' experience of America, I have taken to eating beef and I don't think I'm the worse for it. Steak is something quite tasty and juicy. Now I want to suggest why not you people start eating beef," unquote. Mali talks of killing stray cows to solve the problem of hunger and starvation in the country without caring that Shastras defined the 5 deadly sins and the killing of cow headed the list. He did not even inform his father about grace or the choice of his father, as he was influenced by a modern world where these things have got no relevance. Mali defies all spiritual and moral norms to which his conventional society is so deeply attached. In his attempt to fulfill his reckless individual desires, he recoils back from the social milieu of Malgudi and consciously rejects all the moves so dear to the people of older generation. He finds fault with everything that is Indian. He seems to be much at war with Indian traditionalism and spirituality. Mali's unconventional approach to profession points to a veritable phenomena in the social reality of post-colonial period brought in by globalization of culture. He feels ashamed of his father for being a sweet seller. He advises his father to stop selling sweets and join his business of establishing a factory of story writing machines. According to him, a story writing machine, if used on a large scale, would surely dispel the cultural backwardness of this country, where there has been no modern work of literature except those old stories like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Rather than calling these religious books as epics, he just looked upon them as old story books. Jagan was totally shaken by his belief and his firm faith in the oral tradition of Indian culture, and its surviving receives a snobbish reaction from Mali, who appears to be lured by the cultural iconization of the West. Quote, "Oh, these are not the days of our ancestors. Today we have to compete with advanced countries, not only in economics and industry, but also in culture." Unquote. So there is a difference that the Eastern and Western philosophy has been brought together. The Western people believe in the spiritual reality and a physical one. They think they are separate. But in the Eastern philosophy, there is only one reality, the spiritual and the physical coexist. In Western philosophy, human life is often valued above their life, but in Eastern philosophy, all life may be viewed as sacred. In Western philosophy, the divine is apart from material and exists separately from it, but in Eastern, the divine is a part of creation and found everywhere in it. In Western, the journey of mankind is linear, and in Eastern, the journey of mankind is cyclical. So we can find out the basic difference between the Western and the Eastern thought processes and ideologies. Jagan finds peace in self-realization and getting back towards religion, but the modern man like Mali finds pleasure in drugs and drinking, resulting in damnation. His fragile Gandhian self-regard collapses before his much-loved son's strange actions. The two different approaches to find solace reveals a lack of understanding two different cultures, though the West appears very captivating, but it threatens to shatter the traditional life. The West, Narayan says, is not a model Indians must imitate discriminately. This culminates in unsettlement rather than fulfillment. The Charkha, the Swadeshi, and Jagan's retreat are symbolic of India and the East. The telephone, the novel writing machine, typewriter, befitting, Mali symbolizes the West. Between these two cultures stands Grace, as Grace has tried to imbibe the good values of Indian culture despite being outsider. Similarly, assimilation of both the culture paves the way for a better understanding and adjustment. She works like a catalyst between the two cultures and tries to integrate into the Indian culture she has entered. Thus, Jagan devises a solution by imbibing the time-honored Hindu way of life with the self-effacing integration of Western values and expansion that is hybridity to create multicultural consciousness. So this is how the Grace has provided a solution. She accepted the Indian culture, even being half Korean and half American. She came to India. She was introduced here as his wife, but she was his business partner. But she was much influenced by the sacrificing life of his after Jagan, Mali's father, who has been trying all his best to put his son on a right track. When he came to know that his son is not going to leave his own way of life, he leaves everything and finally adopts another way of life, that is asceticism, and leaves home and finally go to Vanprastha. So this is how it has been taken, that Indian cycle order Indian Eastern cyclic ideologies moves in a cyclical order, where it comes to a full circle, birth, death, and rebirth, whereas Western ideologies goes in a linear order, where there is no looking back and where their life does not come to a full circle. So this is all about my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Uh, Wonderful presentation. Congratulations for this work, Romika
Thank
ji. Um,
you.
well, in the hurry, I forgot to introduce myself to everyone. I'm Dr. Sunila Sharma, Associate Professor of English from Himachal Pradesh.
Ma'am, it's
Well,
honored to be, it's
now,
honored to be in your session, ma'am.
thank you, ma'am. Now to your paper, Romika.
Yeah,
Um,
ma'am.
a wonderful attempt at exploring this post-colonial. Of course, you called it post-colonial, but I felt that nowadays when we are sitting at a time and where everything is becoming cosmic and universal in a way. At the same time, you have chosen this topic of looking at R.K. Narayan's about 50-year-old work, which is
Yes,
still
ma'am.
relevant, very relevant to India and Indian society in a way that even today we are fighting a battle of combating with the materialism of the West and the spiritualism of our own land, very much so when the world out is appreciating following our way, Vedic way or spiritual way of life. At the same time, the materialistic world beckons us, attracts us, and we are always falling a prey to it. So the topic in disintegrating cultural values becomes relevant when you start your paper and you embark on the context. There is a contest between the Western and the Eastern in form of the father and son dichotomy. At the same time, you maneuvered yourself very well through your paper and you reached a consensus or amalgamation wherein Grace comes into the story, and she kind of, brings the multicultural,
Consciousness.
way out, or a solution to the problem that you propagate. So a wonderful paper. You started with the dichotomy or the contrast, then how Mali is living a denial. He goes and enters into, of course, you didn't mention it, but he goes into a business as well as a live-in arrangement with Grace when he goes.
Yes, ma'am. Live in relationship.
And then his preference for meat of cow, knowing that his father is a vegetarian, a very
Yes,
strict
ma'am.
vegetarian and a traditionalist. In fact, he is the one who's invited by people. We all have been, I think, teaching this vendor of sweets over years. And also, how he's ashamed of his country,
Fathers.
and this is what happens. But Grace comes in and brings in a beautiful amalgamation, and she negotiates the West and East and brings it to a sum up of the problem with which and Narayan starts on the plot. So
Yes, ma'am.
I just simply just wanted to know your opinion on how would you find, how much would you find your topic or the relevance to the present scenario of India amidst international relationship.
Yes, ma'am. You have asked a very nice question, ma'am. Basically, I want to tell you that the scenario is altogether changed.
Mhm.
You find in metropolitan cities also, in the big cities also, the cultural value of India has been changing rapidly. People are not just following the same norms as it used to be in our own times or in our parents' time. They do not want to stay with their parents. They just go in the live-in relationships. They take all the major decisions by themselves without informing the family. And so Mali is the real representative of what he has done and what he has been doing. I think Narayan has been very, very foresighted while writing this novel, because he has portrayed the picture which is very much relevant today. Even they don't bother about taking care of their live-in partners. The case of Shraddha has surfaced, and you find it that live-in relationship carries no significance in Indian society.
Absolutely.
It's totally absurd. So you just can see to it that if we are breaking all the norms, we have little respects. We are following everything that is Western. For example, taking on the burger and pizza culture, that has also come along with the coming of the colonizations. And I know you see the dressing sense also, it has also been evolved over a period of times, and now our young generation is totally moving towards it also. So I find that the disintegration which we have seen in that novel is very much relevant in the present scenario, and people are blindly following without looking for a while what our culture has to teach and what does it expect.
In fact, it's becoming more dangerous when you commented on Shraddha case. I just feel that, Narayan brings in a foreign element. This
Yeah,
Chinese
ma'am.
and Korean girl coming and negotiating the gap between the two
Yeah,
generations
ma'am.
in
He's
the
a symbol
country.
of
But
heredity.
in India, we see that, it is our own youth which stands divided, disintegrated, and very much unsure of what to do because they're following Western values somewhere and then they land up confused in their own Indian
Yes,
conservative modes. So
absolutely.
they are standing at a very dangerous kind of edge these days. India is facing more serious situation, but yes, we can identify that disintegration with R.K. Narayan's vendor of sweets. Thank you so much
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank
for
you
your
so much.
paper. Congratulate you. And I also invite anyone who would like to put a query or comment from the audience. If anyone is interested, please come in. Well, I think you have satisfied everyone
Thank
because
you so much, ma'am.
and I also am reminded of the symbols and metaphors you have pointed out from the text. Wonderful attempt. Thank you so much. And
Thank you,
with
ma'am.
this, I think we should move to the second presenter of our panel here today. And the second presenter is Ms. Soumya Dimri. She is a PhD research scholar from Christ University, Bangalore. And her research is on yesterday was a really bad day for him, an international case study. It is intersectional case study, analysis of the 2021 Atlanta spa shooting. Now, I think it's a one going to be. I expect a beautiful, wonderful intersection from you, Soumya. Welcome to the session, and come and take the space, please. Welcome.
Sure, ma'am. So, my topic is on the intersectional case study analysis of the 2021 Atlanta spa shootings. The term intersectionality, it was coined in 1989 by Professor Crenshaw. For Crenshaw, intersectionality was a way to bring to light the dynamics within discrimination law that were not being appreciated in courts. Because before this framework came into being, courts would recognize various forms of oppression in isolation from one another. So, a Black woman would be considered as marginalized to the same extent as other Black men, or marginalized to the same extent as all other women. Oppression would be realized along the lines of race or gender, but not as an overlap between both these aspects. So, intersectionality actually lies at the roots of contemporary cultural studies because it acknowledges that each person's life and access to power, it cannot be understood as being shaped by only a single factor, say race or gender or class, but it must be understood as being shaped by many factors in mutually influencing ways, race and gender and class. So, intersectionality, it has been an especially useful approach when it comes to expanding the boundaries of feminism or in turning feminism into a more inclusive movement. The necessity of intersectionality at every stage, it can be understood by the following case study. In 2021, Robert Aaron Long, a 21-year-old man from Georgia, he was charged with the killing of 8 people, which included 6 Asian American women. Now, Long claimed that he had a sex addiction, and that was what motivated him to take out his frustration at the spa businesses. They were a temptation that he wanted to eliminate. Now, this is not simply a case of ingrained misogyny and gendered violence, but it calls for an investigation of the space that Asian women occupy in Western male fantasies. Nonetheless, the white men who were in charge of his case, they were actually sympathetic to Long. Sheriff Frank Reynolds, he said that the case was not racially motivated. And then you had Captain J. Baker, who justified the mass shooting by saying that it had been a really bad day for him. Now, such statements are hardly surprising given the sympathetic treatment of white male shooters as compared to non white male shooters, especially black male shooters. White male shooters, they are considered mentally ill or they are portrayed as sympathetic characters who took extreme steps under extreme life circumstances, as opposed to black male shooters who are usually made to seem dangerous and as a menace to society. So the court did not find Aaron Long guilty of a hate crime. In other words, he was not found guilty of having committed a crime that was motivated by race or gender or other such grounds. Now, it's important to note that the crime took place in 2021 because this was the year when COVID-19, a disease which had started in Asia, it had led to widespread anti-Asian violence and xenophobia, and America was no exception. Captain J. Baker, he had posted photos of his t-shirt on a Facebook page, and the caption went, COVID-19 imported from China, a virus imported from China. So as Crenshaw states, discrimination, it continues to prevail due to the stubborn endurance of white structures of dominance. According to Robert Aaron Long's roommate, that's Tyler Bayliss, Long had told him that he had an addiction which made him seek out massage parlors for sex, and Long often visited massage parlors explicitly for such sexual services. Massage parlors are establishments that offer massages, but there are parlors that offer illicit sexual services under the guise of providing therapeutic massages. Long was an evangelical Christian. He was deeply religious and he considered his visits to such parlors as his sexual addiction relapses, regarding which he felt particularly ashamed. So after he would visit such parlors, he would come back and he would say that he needed to return to prayer, he needed to return to God. Long had certain beliefs regarding the spa businesses that he targeted because he frequented such places for certain services. Now, authorities have repeatedly emphasized Long's addiction to sex as a way of making it seem that the fact that the majority of his victims were Asian women, it is just a mere coincidence. In fact, one can end up blaming the women for offering certain kind of services. Now, both sex addiction and sex work, these are controversial issues. However, not everyone employed at spa services provides sexual services, and the authorities have refused to comment on whether Long's victims engaged in sex work. Also, when Asian women find themselves in such vulnerable position, that's not a result of their choices alone. It is usually due to a confluence of a variety of factors. Asian American women, they are assumed to be working in low paying service sector jobs such as spa services or nail salons. Women of color, they are disproportionately represented in service sector jobs and they suffer the most severe gender wage gap in the United States. They are discriminated against along gender, racial lines. They find themselves in jobs that are deemed undignified. They find themselves in extremely vulnerable positions. And in this regard, Kathy Park Hong, who's a Korean American writer, she has written in her book Minor Feelings, I sometimes avoid reading a news story with the victimization because I don't want to pay attention to the fact that no one else is paying attention. I don't want to care that no one else cares because I don't want to be left stranded in my rage. So, anti sex work discourse, this is often pushed by evangelical Christians under the guise of saving women. But even if a woman has chosen to be a sex worker, regardless of what one's beliefs are, there's no justification for harming these women. There's the Red Canary Group, which is an Asian sex worker advocacy group, and it points out that maybe the actual job of the victim was besides the point. Because what they say is whether or not they were actually sex workers or they self identified under that label, we know that as massage workers, they were subjected to sexualized violence that was stemming from the hatred of sex workers, Asian workers, immigrant workers, and working class people. Furthermore, the murder of the six Asian American women, it cannot be separated from the problematic representation of Asian women, both by foreign and domestic industries that perpetuate harmful stereotypes about them. So the fetishization and hypersexualization of Asian women, coupled with the belief in their subservience, that is what makes them uniquely vulnerable to violence. Asian women are presented as China dolls or as dragon ladies in popular media. Now, the China doll stereotype, it also goes by other names such as Lotus Blossom and Madame Butterfly. And there are numerous Hollywood movies such as The World of Susie Wong, Rush Hour, Sayonara. They have all popularized the stereotype. Asian women as the China doll, they are depicted as sexually attractive, submissive, and obedient women. They are presented as powerless and in need of men, especially white men, to come and rescue them. Now, this generalization is based on the Western imagination of the dominant West and the submissive East. The word doll will automatically indicate features such as fragility, cuteness, softness. The women are being portrayed as being childlike, passive, submissive, and yet craving sex. In contrast, we have the dragon lady stereotype where the woman is extremely aggressive and sensual. And rather than being sacrificial, she's determined to pursue her own objectives. So you have Hollywood movies such as Kill Bill and The Year of the Dragon. They popularize such a stereotype. But the Dragon Lady is not an empowering female figure because she's hypersexualized and her world still revolves around men, even as she's taking advantage of them. She's beautiful and she's willing to engage in seduction to get what she wants at any cost. So the stereotypes serve to simultaneously infantilize and hypersexualize Asian women. For long, these women clearly didn't register as humans. They registered as mere temptations that he needed to eliminate, and such objectification it poses a threat to the physical and mental state of Asian women. Because the stereotypes attached to them, they make them feel dehumanized. They are made to feel as if they can have no real agency over their body, over their identity. It makes them question whether non-Asian men can ever appreciate their humanity or individuality, or they can only be attracted to them when they are viewed as purely sexual objects. Now, again, in this regard, Park Hong, the writer of Minor Feelings, she writes that well-meaning friends never failed to warn me if a white guy was attracted to me that he probably had an Asian fetish. The result, I distrusted my desireness. My sexuality was a pathology. If anyone non-Asian liked me, there was something wrong with him. Robert Peterson, he's the son of one of the victims, Yong A.U., and he believes that Aaron Long committed a hate crime and he was cognizant of their racial identity, their gender, their workplace, and what all of that represented to him. So he points out that the crime has taken place along the intersecting lines of race, gender, and class. And as aforementioned, Long, he identified as a sex addict, he had undergone treatment for sex addiction. According to District Attorney Shannon Wallace, Long felt tremendous guilt when he viewed porn or when he engaged in sexual acts at massage businesses. He blamed the victims for his inability to control his impulses. So, for Long, Asian women simply were sexual objects that were guilty of ruining his life. As Peterson rightly says about his mother, she wasn't just Asian and she wasn't just a woman. These two are inextricably linked. She is both of these things simultaneously, and you cannot separate one from the other. Now, the intersectional approach, it has been critiqued as a way of trying to reverse the racial hierarchy and place white people at the bottom of the racial ladder. But this is a hollow argument because the real aim of an intersectional approach is to push towards the formation of egalitarian structure. So the above case study, it makes the importance of intersectional study clear because it enables us to understand the mindset of the oppressors and the vulnerable position in which the oppressed people are placed. Intersectional framework, it's a powerful tool to correct power imbalances, and it needs to be used to build inclusive movements that work towards fighting against overlapping forms of discrimination at the same time. So with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Soumya. That was a very well researched incident, rather a gory incident of a shootout at a spa, which was an international news, with the president Joe Biden coming in and making that famous comment where he called Asian women, Asian people, the scapegoats. That was a word used by the president at that time. I remember. But this incident, or the many of such incidents, if you look at if you go through YouTube, you look at several such incidents happening even now in America. It isn't that it has stopped. It is always there. The color of the skin, which ran so deep into the society, not now, but I think it's not this phenomena is something which is universal, the color of the skin. But when you have taken up this intersectional approach, this connects not only the color of the skin, it connects the gender, it connects the class, it connects the objectifying of women. And you have gone deeper into that because you have gone into quoting the son of one of the victims, and that comment has really it's given me a wonderful insight into this, when you have quoted the Robert saying that she wasn't just an Asian and she wasn't just a woman. So your intersectional approach on which you have based your research is quite complete and conclusive when you end your paper with the comment of one of the son of one of the victims, these 6 ladies who were shot dead. There were in fact 8, I believe, and then 6 out of them died on the spot. Such vendetta, such revengeful attitude really scares us off, and we kind of introspect whether the quest for happiness in the West is really meaningful, or bringing us back home to the the abundance in our own culture and in our own, where we call we believe in Vasudev Kutumbakam, and we have in India we accept all races, all cultures with open arms at the same time. So I was just wondering, this is a never-ending, topic if we go on discussing. Nevertheless, I think your paper must attract comments and queries from our audience. And I invite anyone who is willing to come and talk to you on this paper. If there's anyone, please come in and join us. Because it's not a literature you're talking about, you're talking about something which is very human and has several social, political, psychoanalytical, and then gender-based layers that you have, kind of intersected and joined in your. I'm sure that when you go, I mean, your paper must be enriched with more examples and more citations. I think you've given 3 theories, but I think you could also explore more citations from here and there. And it's a very contemporary topic, at least in West these days. People are introspecting, though even the whites are introspecting on what has happened over the years, and it has come to a kind of a situation where we must sit up, and especially the juvenile involvement into the American society on this. So I've been waiting for some comments, but I think everybody is happy to be and to know and to learn a lot from this paper. Thank you so much.